Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a supernatural horror film, The Caller. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. Mary moves to an old apartment and hopes to start a new life there after getting a divorce from her husband, who used to resort to domestic violence and abuse her during their marriage. But strange things happen on her very first day in the apartment. She answers a call from a woman named Rose, looking for her boyfriend. Mary assumes that the girl is probably the last tenant who lived there, after Rose confirms the exact address and phone number of that apartment. Mary doesn't think much and hangs up the phone, since there is nothing she can do to help. The next day, Rose calls again, saying her boyfriend just moves into the same apartment after he returns from the Vietnam War and he is going to propose to her. Mary feels being fooled by the girl, and corrects her that it should be the Afghanistan War, since it's 2011 now, meaning the Vietnam War finished 30 years ago. Then she hears a sudden emotional collapse from Rose, who hangs up the phone immediately. Mary feels very sorry about that, and decides to call back to make sure Rose is okay, but is surprised to find out the phone fails to be connected, because it's a reported never-existing phone number. Mary just treats it as a prank from her dumbass ex-husband, who keeps interfering with her life. Later, Rose calls again, informing that she has moved into the same apartment with her boyfriend, and it is 1979 at her time. Shaken by that unbelievable message, Mary begins to wonder if they live in the same apartment, but in different times and dimensions due to some space-time errors. Later, Mary follows Rose's instructions, and discovers a faded picture of a rose on the wall, which makes Mary believe that she's in contact with a girl from the past. Staying lonely in 1979 with no other friends, Rose calls Mary very often, and talks about her unhappy life with her boyfriend, who betrays her, and keeps hunting hormones from new girls. And what's worse, he abuses her very often. Mary shows her much sympathy over the same miseries she's experienced from her ex-husband. Out of anger, Mary tells Rose unintentionally that she should have killed her boyfriend. The next day, Mary finds a new wall in the basement out of nowhere. And later Rose's call reveals that she has built the wall and hidden her boyfriend's dead body inside after killing him. Mary is terrified by that, and pulls the phone cable out immediately. Deciding not to talk to Rose anymore, she seals the basement door later, without reporting to the police, because she's too afraid to check what's hidden behind the wall, and believes that nobody will believe her insane story. Mary applies for a French class later under her therapist's advice, hoping to distract her stress from recent incidents and her insane ex-husband, who keeps stalking and monitoring her. Later in the class, she meets a math teacher, and falls in love with him soon. The new relationship scares her uninvited ex-husband away, and takes her out of the depression for a while. Later someday, failing to call somebody to fix the broken air conditioner via her cell phone, Mary plugs her phone cable back on, but never expects that Rose's call comes in soon. Rose is very upset about Mary for avoiding her calls, and threatens to hurt the young Mary and Mary's mother, that she found in 1979, if her calls get refused again. Rose claims that thanks to the personal information Mary has told her previously, she's located the young Mary and her mother, and sees them taking a photo in front of a church. Mary rushes to check an old picture, taken before the said church, and is horrified to find a vague figure of a woman, standing behind her and her mom. Later, Mary asks for some information about the mysterious girl Rose from an old gardener, who has worked in the same community for over 30 years. He recalls that a woman named Rose did live in the same apartment many years ago, but later suffered depression from her hormone hunter boyfriend, who constantly abused and threatened to break up with her. Until someday, the boyfriend disappeared suddenly, and Rose was later found committing suicide by hanging herself with a phone cable in the apartment. Feeling astonished, Mary tells the story of Rose to the math teacher, who however finds it hard to trust what he's been told. He would rather blame that for another prank from her ex-husband. Mary, however, totally believes her time and dimension crossing connection with Rose, and determines to protect the little Mary and her mother. With that in mind, she later lies to Rose that she visited the old Rose in a nursing house. Rose raises her interest, and is eager to know how she looks like in the future. Mary lies further that the old Rose suffers a serious mental problem, and advises her not to be so bigoted, because she shares responsibilities for the bad relationship with her boyfriend. Otherwise, her boyfriend would not want to leave her. Rose is shocked to find that Mary knows more about her, and keeps asking Mary who the rumor teller is. Instead of answering her question directly, Mary just says she will visit the old crazy Rose tomorrow, and hangs up. The next day, Rose calls again to ask if there are any differences in the old Rose, which, of course, can't be answered by Mary. Then, following Rose's instructions, Mary digs out a bottle under a tree in the backyard, which to her shock, contains a severed finger from Rose and a message slip, explaining Rose is going to kill herself after her cheating boyfriend's death. But she is infuriated by Mary's lying about her visits to the old Rose in the future, so she plans to bust Mary's lies first, because Mary should notice the old Rose's lost finger if she does visit her. Frightened by Rose's crazy actions, Mary asks the math teacher to come over, who now believes it's not a prank, and later answers Rose's call for Mary, after calming Mary down. Rose hears about Mary's math teacher lover before it and asks him to tell Mary that she's prepared another surprise for her and that all rumor tellers will suffer punishments. Mary gets Rose's implication and goes to see the gardener immediately, but only finds an unknown family living inside. The woman claims that though she lives there for a long time, she has never heard of any gardener as described by Mary. Mary realizes that the so-called punishment is to kill the gardener. As a result, the gardener just entirely disappears in the present time. The math teacher invites Mary to his place that night and suggests she should move out of that cursed apartment to get rid of the haunting Rose. Mary agrees and packs up her stuff the next day, waiting for the math teacher at a park where they are supposed to meet, but he never shows up. Feeling odd that time, she visits his parents later, who she met once before, but now they don't even recognize her at all, and just tell her where their little son is buried. Mary's horrified to find her lover's tomb in a cemetery. What's more, a worker there even tells her the so-called math teacher went missing when he was very little, and his parents couldn't even find his body back by far. In fear and despair, while arriving home, Mary knocks down a big hole on the newly built basement wall, and discovers 3 dead bodies as expected. They are Rose's dead boyfriend, the disappeared gardener, and her missing lover at his young age. Rose calls that night, and admits having killed her young lover. She then introduces a new friend to Mary. From the voice over the phone, Mary is astonished to find that little girl is exactly herself in the past. As a warning to Mary, Rose pours some boiling oil on the little Mary. While hearing screams from that side, Mary is horrified to find huge scary scars appearing suddenly from her shoulder to belly. Mary realizes that she has to kill Rose to protect herself in the past. Later, she conducts some research for her plan, and waits for Rose's next call, where she tells Rose nobody is willing to play with the little Mary due to her scary scars, so she hopes Rose can play bowling with her in a local club to celebrate her birthday on October 16, 1979, hoping to see a big fire accident in the club on the same day, which left no survivors, according to the news she found on the internet. Rose is happy to offer that favor, as she knows Mary is under her control again. While waiting anxiously that night, an uninvited phone call just brings Mary into a nightmare. Rose tells Mary she missed a bus earlier the day, and couldn't make it to the goddamn club, which however, saves her from being buried by the fire disaster. However, realizing that Mary tries to set her up into a deadly accident, Rose gives up her suicide plan, and turns to take revenge on the young and innocent Mary, despite Mary's begging Rose to spare her young self. Then, Rose tells Mary to welcome a coming visitor at the door, who turns out to be the old Rose, coming to kill the old Mary in the present world of 2011. While concurrently, the young Rose is about to kill the little Mary in the past world of 1979. In the present world, Mary takes a knife and locks herself in a room, but the old Rose chases tightly and starts to break the wooden door outside. Mary hides in panic, but stabs herself by mistake, while the little Mary in the past world asks for Mary's help via the phone, telling that Rose goes outside to grab something. Mary urges the little Mary to run away, but it's too late, because Rose on that side is coming back soon, and the old Rose on this side also seems to break through nearly. Right at that critical moment, Mary, instead of asking the little Mary to escape, encourages the little Mary to fight back against the monster. Shortly after, the little Mary takes courage and kills Rose in 1979, using a piece of the broken mirror, which makes the old Rose disappear suddenly in the world of 2011, right before she could reach and kill Mary. In the final scene, Mary stands up to her ex-husband's endless stalking and abusement, and only replies to him that it's his last chance. Later, while humming a tune she learns from Rose, Mary is busy building a new wall in the basement, which is used to bury her ex-husband's dead body. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.